Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last night I had someone reach out to me and said they heard I was going to speak again on Ukraine on the floor, and they asked me what I was going to talk about. I said to reinforce that Ukraine needs our help, that Europe needs to step up, and that Vladimir Putin is the personification of evil. And I'm going to try and accomplish all of that in less than 10 minutes so that we can get over to the vote. Mr. President, since this war, everybody needs to remember how this war started, just to show you, you can believe me when I tell you, you know when Putin's lying when his lips are moving. And let's go back to October before the invasion in February. He said he was just putting troops together on a training mission. Thousands of troops massed just coincidentally near the Ukrainian border, but a training mission. And then it became a military exercise. And now it's become an illegal invasion of a sovereign democratic nation that has experienced 80,000 dead. Service members, more than 13,000 dead civilians, 400,000 wounded service members, 30,000 injured civilians. And let me tell you a little bit about those civilians. They're 16-year-olds who had their leg blown off because Vladimir Putin ordered the launching of dumb bombs into residential areas. He allowed drones to hit children's hospitals that we visited. This is the carnage that the Ukrainian people are experiencing every single day, 24/7, 365, since the invasion 3 years ago. Vladimir Putin is a murderer. He's not only allowed his service members, some estimated 800,000, lose their lives on the battlefield, but he's gone so far as to engage mercenaries, Wagner group that he had down in Africa, in Ukraine, murdering indiscriminately anybody that moves. And if you want to see the best example of that, you need to go to Bucha and hear the story that we heard when we were there. Bucha is a community of a couple of 100,000 people just outside of Kyiv. Shortly after they invaded, and it was clear they weren't going to achieve their objectives, they decided that they were going to invoke terror in the minds of those who were fighting and the civilians in Ukraine. So they decided to go into a community that'd be similar to going out to Northern Virginia. So imagine Kyiv as Washington, D.C. And they go out in Northern Virginia and they just indiscriminately start murdering people. They killed over 500 people in 33 days, all of them civilians. And this isn't like urban legend. This was caught on video. People riding a bicycle, walking a dog, being murdered. Vladimir Putin ordered that. Vladimir Putin allowed that. Ladies and gentlemen, the surprise to Vladimir Putin was he had no earthly idea what the strength of democracy and freedom has in the hearts and minds of human beings. The Ukrainian people, in spite of overwhelming odds, numbers and weapons, they defended it. They've been defending it for 3 years. So we've got to help them. There is good and evil here. There is no kind of, Putin's just misunderstood. This man is a murderer. This man is a rapist. He is a rapist by virtue of allowing systematic rapes happen in places that he invades. That's how he operates. He is evil. Ukraine needs help. Now, before I talk more about that help, I want to talk about Europe having to step up. I really appreciated what Senator Collins put together in terms of the contribution to the Ukraine effort. I know, Senator Shaheen and I, and thank you, Senator, for having this colloquy today, spent a lot of time tracking NATO countries. Let's make sure that on the one hand, we thank Europe for stepping up and doing its part in supporting this effort. But let's not forget that our NATO partners have come short in satisfying their obligation to NATO to the tune of over $2 trillion over the last 20 years. The mind races. What would have happened if all that money had been spent? And that our NATO alliance was even stronger if everybody had just met the bare minimum for NATO support. $2 trillion more would have been spent over the last 20 years. Would that have been enough to possibly dissuade Putin from invading Ukraine? We'll never know. But what I do know is I don't want Europe to not get credit for supporting Ukraine, but Europe also has to shoulder some responsibility for NATO being more vulnerable by not living up to their commitment over the last 20 years. Let's just get that right, folks, so that we don't have the distraction, the American people get confused between NATO members not stepping up and doing their fair share, so why are you asking for more money for Ukraine? The reason we're asking for more money for Ukraine is because Vladimir Putin has a plan, and we could play right into it. People need to understand Ukraine is a doormat to Europe. It's how he gets from Russia into countries that are trying to democratize and come closer to the West. If he succeeds in Ukraine, he will move into Moldova. He is already actively causing problems in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And as a matter of fact, Senator Shaheen, I don't know if you're aware, but tomorrow, the Republic of Srpska legislature is going to consider a resolution to separate from BiH. That's Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's got Vladimir Putin all over it. He's already getting his chess pieces around the board. If he feels like he can get some level of success in Ukraine, he's going to march right through there, folks. It is going to happen. And then finally, I had somebody ask me, why are you so animated over Ukraine? Why are you so concerned with Russia? I give them a one-word answer: China. China is supporting Putin, at least economically. There's even an argument that ammunitions and other things are going their way. Does anybody really believe that North Korea would send people to the battlefield? They've lost a few thousand since they've been there, unless China was okay with it. And then we have Iran. Iran is sending drones to Russia to kill innocent civilians and military personnel in Ukraine. They are the axis of evil. And now they've regened themselves. We can't let Putin have a win in Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen. We have to step up and make sure that the American people know that it's in our national interest to support Ukraine. And we also have to let Vladimir Putin know that we do owe him thanks in one way. Thanks for waking up Europe and understanding the grave existential threat that he represents. Thanks for actually getting Finland and Sweden into NATO and adding 800 miles of border on the Russian border. Thank you for that. And now I want to thank him for receding back into the cave that he should live the rest of his life in and let democratic nations be free and free from his threats. And until we're sure of that, we should not relent.